Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Municipal Accommodation Tax Ad-Hoc Committee to order. I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement, followed by a moment of silence, and then a respectful Stratford statement. We acknowledge that Stratford is situated on lands shared between many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples today. As a city, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land in which we live and work. Today, we acknowledge the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the neutral Arawandra peoples, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and play on this land. Respect in Stratford. The Corporation of the City of Stratford is committed to providing quality service to all members of the public, council, and our employees. Our goal is to promote a safe, healthy, respectful, inclusive, and positive environment. We have a responsibility to treat people with respect by creating safe and respectful spaces. It is the city's expectation that all present will be respectful. Item 2 is declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. That's the obvious ones that we're talking about, not tax, but thirdly is the adoption of minutes. So I did notice that John has a couple of corrections or updates. So what I'll do is ask for somebody to move the minutes, and then we'll have a discussion about possible modifications. So I get a motion to move the
motion to. Can you clarify what that means, please?
Basically, we're putting forward the adoption of the minutes. We're putting the minutes on the table for discussion before we vote to approve.
So we're not approving the minutes at this point.
Not approving them when you make the motion, then you can have a chat. So was that Pam? You making the motion to adopt the minutes? Yes. So John, you've had a couple of things that you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to use the terminology right, but I think that there's been a procedural error, maybe the right term, because there were some pretty important topics in the last meeting that were not reflected in the minutes here. In particular, there was a survey from 30 accommodators and a lengthy presentation that was followed with extensive discussion. I don't see that captured in the minutes or in the subsequent documents. So I'd like to get that recognized.
Okay. So I'm gonna turn it over to the clerks to see how we might be able to rectify. So I noticed that John also wrote some comments and saw his document back.
So through the chair, so the purpose of the minutes is not to be a transcript of the meeting. It's simply to record the actions or directions given at the meeting. We can look at the comments made and see if there's any additions that can be made, but again, it's not meant to be a transcript. It's just supposed to be high level, quick overview, and then we do the detailed action direction.
Yeah, then I'd like to make a motion that the survey and presentation be part of the official submission to council.
Right, so just adding that we had a conversation about that there was survey presented, that we had a conversation about possible updates to the survey. Does that sound like what reflected on what we did?
No, not to me. There was a survey presented from over 30 accommodators that shared their desires and opinions for the MAC policy. None of those ideas are properly full in the document that's been provided. So I'd like to make a motion, if it cannot be part of the minutes, then the actual presentation and survey itself be an appendix in the presentation that goes to council.
So through the chair, so it wouldn't form part of the minutes. However, the ad hoc committee is going to prepare a report for council's consideration once the final recommendation is made. And if there is a wish to have that additional background information included, because I do know information is supposed to be provided to council on how the ad hoc committee undertook consultations and what they heard, that could certainly form part of that document.
And I think you submitted them last time, and we did have them on as an addendum, so they are official documents already.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, does the addendum and previous agendas, does that go to the council?
We could pull documents from They can look at them, it's public document for anybody.
And I'm submitting a motion, and I hope somebody will second it, that the survey, the presentation and supporting documents become an appendix to the formal package that goes to council.
Okay, so we'll deal with that motion in a minute, because it's a little bit separate from the minutes.
Well, no,
So-
I'm just responding to we can't put
Yeah.
that in the minutes.
Yeah, okay, so as far as the minutes go. Do we wanna add maybe a sentence or two to reflect the fact that we did have a conversation about a survey? And we had a conversation about two surveys, with one that Carmen prepared, as well as the one we prepared, so we had a couple of conversations around it. And said that we would, the survey that's gonna go out on Engage Stratford, that we would review it today.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that was reflected in the minutes.
It was.
We-
So what I don't understand is how the decision is made around what's included in the minutes, like we're gonna use Engage Stratford. And not the fact that 45 minutes of our time was spent going over material that a large segment of the accommodators wanted this group to know about and want the council to. So are you saying that it's not possible to put that in the minutes?
Through the chair, so the municipal act outlines what's to be included in the minutes, so it's. The clerk shall record without note or comment any action or direction given at a meeting, and then any procedural matters. Our practice at the city has been to do high level conversation. The survey prepared by yourself was attached to an addendum and circulated to members, so that is publicly available on the website. Those documents and the very specific conversation that was had at the meeting is not included in the minutes, because that doesn't fall under what we're permitted to do. However, our meetings are recorded, and those videos are also posted to the city's website, so there are different avenues. Members of the public and members of the council can review that. In addition, as I said, the ad hoc committee will prepare a report for council's consideration, and at that time, a decision can be made to include those additional materials as appendices to provide council some additional information on how that ad hoc committee came to their overall recommendation on a policy.
Can I ask you a question? Are you saying that you will not put anything in the minutes about that topic?
So through the chair, if there is a specific sentence such as members discussed a survey created by John, we can certainly look at adding that in. However, there won't be additional comments of the committee spent 45 minutes discussing the survey and the following comments were heard in the survey. That would be the detail that would be appropriate for the
Perfectly
meeting
fair.
minutes.
Yeah, perfectly fair. And we'll park along with the motion, but I would like some kind of documentation that says opinions from over 30 accommodators was part of the agenda, as in the addendum, and the results of an extensive survey were shared.
So through the chair, that specifically wouldn't be added, but we do adopt the addendum to the agenda, so that would be reflected in the minutes that the addendum to the agenda was adopted. Yeah.
And the survey from over 30 accommodators was shared. That's allowed.
Through the chair, you could add a sentence under what the committee discussed, just taking that survey that was initiated on your part, John, just, we want to be clear.
Sure.
Initiated on your part, was reviewed by members. Is that sufficient?
Representing the opinions of over 30 accommodators.
Yeah, you amended.
Okay, anybody else on the committee have comments about the minutes and the modification that we've been having? Thoughts? Okay, so we're good to go with that? So we have a motion on the floor to adopt the minutes as amended. So all in favor? Okay, carries, that's great. Okay, so next we have the adoption of an addenda, but we don't have one. So we'll skip right over item number 4, item number 5 are the items for discussion. 5.1 is the draft use of municipal accommodation tax policy. So this is what we put together based on the last discussion, Carmen and some other folks worked on, putting together, a more clear format, basically pulling some ideas of things that we discussed. So I guess at this point, that might be a good idea to just sort of work our way through that policy and discuss any possible updates or additions. So John, we know you provided yours. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to look at those, but in general.
It wasn't an accessible format, I was familiar with that, so
Yeah.
there is a more accessible format, I did the best I could. This would.
So I guess question for the committee is, before we maybe dive right into that, all those comments, was there any other general thoughts that folks had about the policy or things that stood out that you wanted to discuss?
I have a concern, on the bottom of, and again, we've got two sets of page numbers, but it,
three was.
okay. At the top, it's page 9, at the bottom, it's page 4. And the paragraph, it's sort of maybe 2/3 of the way down. The intent is to maintain at least 50% of the city's share of annual MAT funds raised for future use and or at council's direction in keeping with council's strategic objectives. For example, if the city's share of annual MAT revenues averaged 300,000, the amount available for this funding program would be 150,000. In previous iterations, I think in the one before, that paragraph existed to a certain degree, but it was 25%. And then in the iteration before, it was vague. So I'm concerned that we're doing all this work for what is starting out to be a fairly small sum of money, and that's now half. So I'm not sure, Carmen, can you speak to that? Like, is because there's no language here about maintaining a level in the reserve fund. So I just want to understand why the city would be keeping half of this money.
Through the chair, I think the intent was to just try to clarify that the intent is that there's some funds available that council will still have some discretion over with respect to the MAT. They still have to follow the policy. They still have to follow the legislation, but there needs to be some avenue for if there's some program or some initiative that comes forward outside of this application process, I'll call it, that council still has some authority or some discretion to be able to utilize the MAT funds. That's the purpose of that paragraph.
Okay, which I would understand if we were talking about millions of dollars, but we're talking about a fairly paltry sum. And I also question why it was raised from the initial, from version 2 of 25% to now 50%.
Just using some best practices, I looked at a couple of other policies and that's what I came up with. It's up for discussion. This group doesn't want to proceed with that, then we'll change that and can revert it to whatever.
Just a point of clarification on that, because I noticed the same language. Is that saying that 50% will be put into a MAT reserve fund to be spent on that? Or will that 50% be put in a general use account that may or may not be spent according to MAT?
Good question, and thanks for clarification. The intent is that 100% of MAT revenues, when raised, go into the MAT reserve fund. Period. That's where they get parked when they first receive them, and then they get pulled out in compliance with the policy, whether it's through the application process and awarding through the application process or through the other part with council.
So this isn't like a rainy day fund that we're going to
No.
have in that fund. That's what it reads like as a layperson.
Well, it does speak to the mat reserve fund, so I'm not sure.
Maybe it's a different portion of the language later on.
Yeah, so we do have a general tax fund, but this isn't where this is gonna end up.
Yes.
So we've always kept it separate because we have to.
Yeah.
We can't use it for general spending, so, I don't know, is there a way in that paragraph, besides talking about percentages? Is there a way to just say the city's, whatever percent the city's share will go into the mat reserve fund?
Yes.
You know, we could just clarify that where it's headed.
I'm not sure if this was the section you quoted, Jennifer. The intent is to maintain at least 50% of the city's share of MAP funds raised for future or the council's discretion. For example, if the city's share is 300,000, 150 would be set aside. So it's talking about the city's share.
Oh,
50%
okay.
City's share.
Yeah,
It's a good point. So the city's share refers to the 50% that they are allowed to keep from that.
So the
Not given to-
non-destination
Right.
strategies.
So you're looking for a little bit more clarity in the language there?
Yeah, if there's, the way I ended it up was, $100 come in, $50 goes to Destination Stratford, the other 50 goes into a MAP fund.
Right.
But I don't understand what the MAP reserve is, how that's different. That made it sound like we're gonna set aside half
Okay.
to fund future initiatives.
I can clarify that language. The intent was not that it is a different place altogether. It's all map reserve. fund.
Well, some places we use MAP fund, some places we use reserve funds, so it wasn't, that makes it sound in two different accounts.
Sure.
yeah, so using that $100 example, then the $100, 50 goes to Destination Stratford, 50 goes into the reserve fund, and then this suggesting that 25 of those dollars would then be used for the grant program. And 25 would then be saved as part of the reserve. Am I reading that correctly?
No, that's not what.
50-50, it's really 50-50, so.
50-50.
50 on the 50.
Right.
Yeah, so 25 would
Yeah.
then stay in the reserve fund, and 25 of those dollars would be earmarked for the grant program.
Well, we all, like, it's all earmarked for math purposes.
Yes.
So,
But the
yeah,
grant program within the map.
right. The idea is not to just like give out all of the monies from that through this granting program. And to allow council some discretion for other types of initiatives that may arise that are in keeping with the policy. But that they might, that could arise, and I'm envisioning this more in a case where we don't get significant number of applications. And then council says, well, maybe we could use it for X, Y, Z eligible event, right? And then they would still have some ability to do that.
I'm sorry, I would be much more comfortable with that if there was actually a clear definition to what council can and cannot use, because that's fantastic that we are looking to fund some accessible housing or whatever that project was.
Before.
But I don't think it should be coming from here.
Absolutely not. Again.
But it did. And that's my concern. When it was granted before, the 150,000, that was MAT money. So unless we have clear parameters, we're gonna end up in this position again.
Why couldn't we just use the language you just used? In the absence of a compelling pipeline of grant-based ideas, council can use the funds for other MAP-oriented purposes.
Sure.
Yeah, because council still has to act within the parameters of provincial policy for this study.
But it is very vague.
And
Well,
it has in the past.
And to your point about the language. And where it says there's a highlighted piece in here in the marked up version for future use and or at council's direction, that's vague, I agree. So I'll change that so that it's in keeping with this policy and that it's,
And that it lands in the reserve fund.
right,
So that's where it's.
yeah.
So you're gonna strike that language that says council's discretion for other purposes or whatever it says?
Where does it say council's discretion, sorry?
Raised for future use and or at council's direction. So that'll be more specifically saying that that council will have to spend the money according to
And in keeping with council's strategic objective, in keeping with this policy's intent.
Intent.
Like that kind of, that would be, that's what I was trying to say, but it didn't come out that way.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so it's giving direction to council to say, you know, within the intent of this policy that we're creating, that's where we'd like to see that. So like, something comes to mind, like next year, we've managed to secure hosting a conference called OSAM, Ontario Small Urban Municipalities, here in Stratford in April. So that I can envision, like, that's a project that we wouldn't necessarily want to apply for a grant, that it's bringing a convention here, so it would, you know, it would sort of fit under the umbrella of what we're trying to do with the policy. So yeah, it would be important that we have a bit of money that capital could use for those kind of initiatives that would be, you know, initiated through the city. Okay, so I think we're clarifying the language around that, and the numbers part that Jennifer brought up. We're clear on what's happening, that it's the city's portion, but half of it would be a part of this grant program. That's the way we have the numbers we have right now. So, and the other half would be put into reserve, which is basically saving it for other related.
Is that what you're saying?
and it could be for a future year application. And it's not gonna necessarily be parked there forever. Just to create a little bit of room to build for something larger that might not be able to be
Or
done.
here's a bad year.
Yeah,
So that was what I was speaking about in terms of a rainy day fund, that we're bringing $100, 50 goes to Destination Stratford, there's 50 left. So what you guys are saying is 25 will be spent through the grant program, 25 will be in some kind of map driven
right.
discretionary. Okay.
Yeah,
But then the subsequent year, like if nothing happened, say we had no application, then we had no council initiatives, that $50 would still be there the following year. Well, say we get another $100, right, it's gonna compound and we may be able to accept that more applications in the subsequent year. And be able to just distribute it accordingly.
Great.
okay, so is everyone clear on that? Language and what's going where when? Okay, so,
I think I had some
yeah, Nathan. go ahead.
observations. I think that there's maybe some opportunities to like shape the language to incentivize the people that we really want a little bit more. So for example, this was actually from our last meeting minutes. We talked about adding a requirement for like 180-day advance before the event, but we didn't really define like when the city would pay. So there's things like looking for opportunities to you know, if you win it, you immediately get the money, or you don't, or whatever. There's something about expediency of the city that I think would be appealing to grantees. There are things around like the distance, like we defined a visitor, someone's 40 kilometers away. We know that anybody traveling 40 kilometers away, there's no way they would spend the night. That's like in Hamburg or something. So is there a way of incentivizing the scorecard to say like, hey, we're targeting people that are over 100 kilometers away, or is there a way of incentivizing the kind of people that we want with the language a little bit? I had
Give an example of what you have in mind.
well, I kind of see like that we're in defining sort of different tiers of awardees, like we've sort of said small and big, but I also think that we aren't having to find like tier 1 is like direct drivers of MAP, and tier 2 might be indirect drivers of MAP, and tier 3 might be lower impact but still loosely associated with the tourism industry. So to me, it's like a direct driver of MAP would be someone that's from more than 100 kilometers away, someone that is a multi-day event. It's someone that is, so I think those are the things that the scorecard is kind of meant to tease out, right? And it's the conferences like you were mentioning, or tournaments or whatnot. So those, making sure that we're identifying in this policy to the people like that are applying, hey, this is what tier one looks like. This is what a tier two looks like. It's maybe smaller, it's maybe more direct. It's things like the wayfinding that seems a little bit weaker, or even more passive, things like.
I agree with you that there was some really great language in the principles section, but when we got to the actual scorecard, a lot of those principles like driving over visits, direct benefit to tourism were either absent or very, very small. Like less than 10% or something. So I wonder if there's the opportunity in the scorecard, which is where the rubber's gonna meet the road, to give to recognize the different flavors that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I was going to.
So the idea of tiers.
Well-
Does that make sense? Like, I like that idea, and I guess my comments back after reading through it was, like, do we need to distinguish between a major event and just a regular event? I like the idea of tiers better than just like, big little, that set up, but is this thought, like, can you envision how this might work? Is it a monetary tier? Like, if your event is, you're asking for.
I think it's just sort of, it's
Certain amount.
gonna score better, like we define or design the scorecard so that you score better if you're a tier one, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, but so we can also go in the policy itself, like on page 13, we list out some examples. I think this is another area that could be divided into, like, where it says culinary experience tours and arts and culture experience walking tours. We could organize this whole list of ideas into, hey, this is going to score really well, and we're helping people apply that way. So we could say multi-day events, conferences, tournaments. These are examples, really strong examples of like a tier one going to score really well.
So
Walking tours, culinary experiences, these would probably be more of a tier two. You may, not score as well or get as much funding. Or
wouldn't that tiering be a function of, if you were asking about dollars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't it be a function of the return on investment that you get? Right, if it's a really powerful guest driving experience, that's gonna be a one level regardless of what the spending is. And let's define what that looks like. But you're saying there's also room for for a vibrant pipeline and different aspirations. Is that right, or what do you
Yeah.
understand?
I think so, although I get a little bit distracted with the ROI piece of the sorry, this is not what you were just saying, but talking about return on investment, there's a piece of the scoring criteria where we're asking the applicant to define the ROI. And I think I think we're gonna get a lot of BS in that. Like, I think it's our job, or whoever's job is doing it, to determine the ROI based off of the financial makeup of their presentation. It's a little bit.
But they would be closer to say, here's how many visitors I think you'll get.
Yeah.
In terms of ROI and net present value, et cetera, sure. But you still need to ask the experts, the ownership.
Yeah.
How many guests do you think you get?
Right, I agree, yeah.
So maybe not the word ROI.
Yeah, I guess just sort of,
Projection.
yeah, like I think just keeping it high level you're going to get very big ROI kinds of responses. So I think if we can narrow that down a little bit more.
Fortunately, there's another question that asks how credible is the business case?
Yeah, which is maybe redundant
Or
or
not, if you think that they're gonna keep bullshit.
yeah.
That's where you have to, like, if it's a new idea, right, you've gotta make things up. Basically, and like your best guess of what's gonna happen. So there's. Where can you draw the line where actual facts is and wishful thinking starts, and it's a bit vague.
I think letting the owner, the champion of the idea that they're bringing, whether it's municipal conference or jazz, but whatever. The owners, the choreographers of the event should be able to say that we run this in smaller locations, and here's how many guests we can. Right. If it's up to us, the financial arm of it to say, okay, how do we translate that to some kind of economic?
Right.
But there should be an ROI component, which maybe just won't be very nice. We have to get to do the ROI analysis.
Right.
Well, I think maybe we just have a back end, to be so that, so for instance, like we have all these scoring things, but we don't have sort of a scoring listness for the people that are doing the scoring, making it very subjective. So let me try and restate that. Like the cost benefit section, does the estimated cost of the project outweigh the experience? As the person from the city that's evaluating it, they should be looking at something that says, okay, 9 to 10 points means clear and credible, it means strong evidence, means benefits, blah, blah. 6 to 8 points means this, general cost estimate provided, like it's loose, it's.
So a scoring matrix.
So a scoring matrix that is for the.
Right.
The process, the internal document, I think is just as important. And that's where I think you can lean into that, defining the ROI a little bit more.
Trying to remember what that's called in academics, is where they, you have it's a scoring matrix where it actually shows the students, these are the outcomes we're looking for, and then you go through and as you mark it, you're marking that, but you let the students know beforehand, this is what we're looking for.
Yeah, this is the scoring guide.
This is what's gonna get you points.
It's usually called an anchored scale, where different levels of accomplishment are attached to different metrics.
Right. So with back to the tier thing, that would be more of the end of like, you scored it. And you've got, like, we were talking about, like, I think this policy suggests, do you have over, or from major project, if you have over 60 points, that you qualified, so some sort of.
I think
that gets you into tier 1 by getting X number.
Right. I think I was trying to make 2 points, and I was I wasn't speaking very clearly. So one of them is that's like part of how it's evaluated, but I think it's also about demonstrating examples of tier 1 and tier 2 in the document for the applicants. Because I want to attract the right people to it. And so I want people to not waste their time applying if they don't understand, by the way, you're going to be a tier 3, don't even bother, kind of thing.
Would it make sense to have a case study that is presented to the applicants as here's a hypothetical example that you can use for inspiration. So it's not a real event, but here are the kinds of things that we're looking for, to your point. Just wondering how you bring that into life for an eventually.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was just that, you had a list of brainstorms in the document already. I think it's more of organizing that and giving an example. Even more concise than a case study would just be like, this might score a blank, this might score a blank, for examples. So that's just, if you have any thoughts on that, would that be clear enough, do you think, just to give example scores of different kinds of
support to say that if we want to make it easy and help tools to find the applicants that we get back, providing them with more guidance is valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if we were looking at the section that you were looking at, was where there's the bullets and it says sport, event, conference, attraction, servicing, and then you would say, okay, so, a 3-day soccer tournament. And approximately with this many attendees would be this school, approximately, like those kind of examples.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, or you could just list them in order of, hey, these are going to be higher, these are going to be moderate, these are going to be lower, and maybe you don't have to pin it down too much, but I think grouping the examples and helping people understand that a little in another way, this is what we're looking for.
Which part of the document is that they were?
If we're looking at bottom page numbers, it's 8,
Thank you.
top number 13. Thank you. For evaluation and assessment.
Would it make sense to go through the document kind of in the order this
Do that.
in fact, where people are?
So, yeah, the purpose, the definitions, I think were probably similar to last time, so we're good on the definitions, so that would be, that's printed at the bottom, page 3. Roles and responsibilities, I think that's pretty straightforward.
I just wanted to go back, so, as I did mention, I didn't know if we had room to change the definition of visitor, or if it makes sense, but that 40 kilometers, as I said, is,
Right.
isn't maybe targeting the document for the policy, so that's, well, as strong as we look at it.
So where did we get the 40 come from? Does that tourism,
That's the thing,
Yeah,
like that, okay, so we're not changing that,
It-
okay.
Well, we don't have to, we can't change it to be what we want it to be though, like, it's just something that. When like provincial ministries are granting and stuff, they use that type of metric. The 40.
Because it doesn't really matter where they're coming from, what you're driving at is the, you know, they're gonna be here for a while as opposed to a day trip, so.
Yeah, so
It's overly guess.
right, because this 40 kilometers doesn't really get you to Kitchener.
So what if we added? Like, I don't know if we could say overnight stay, that wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee, but. Say a visitor from afar, and make it, I don't know, like, that, is there another term that we could put in there that could be, say, the 100 kilometer?
Why? Measure overnight stays.
Or maybe you could, I don't know, we could put that in there, do we have that's one of our definitions? An overnight visitor?
I don't think the overnight visitor has anything to do with the distance though.
Yeah,
Correct,
yeah.
Right,
but
so how would we define somebody from 100 kilometer visitor? Beyond the GTA visitor,
but does it really matter the distance? Well, one is the behavior, you want to measure the behavior.
Right. Yeah, maybe I'm getting caught up on that, but I just want to make sure that the money isn't targeting the wrong people.
I think it's great. But if it's not 40, then why couldn't it be an overnight stay?
But
yeah,
I mean,
can't
it's
predict
fine.
that.
This is just in the,
You can't really predict people's behavior, because somebody might want.
yeah, so
Who's gonna show up at all? All you're trying to say is, it's a 3-day concert tour, so people are probably gonna stay overnight. As opposed to, I don't know if they came from London or Kitchener or New Hamburg.
Right,
okay, can we come back to that? Maybe there's again, I think that this is more about how it's scored than the definition.
right, so maybe that could be tweaked in the scoring.
Yeah,
Is the reality gonna be that once this is through council, really it's the scorecard that's gonna be involved. We will come back, people will come back to this once in a while, it's gonna be the scorecard.
The scorecard and policy that people will use to evaluate the scorecards, but yeah, and like the application process, all of that. For sure, and the scorecard is probably the easiest to adjust.
Just seems that, you know, once this is, the dust settles and applications are coming in and recommendations is in council. It seemed like it's gonna be, yeah, here's the policy, here are the scorecards.
Yeah,
It's gonna be the scorecards.
it will be the
It's
scorecard
very
that will
obvious.
help guide the decision making, for sure.
So I think that's where the policy and the strategy is really important.
Right.
The short end is gonna be the scorecard.
Right.
It's maybe it's back to definitions, I think.
yeah. Well, no, that was it. That was just
That
like
was the,
defining like high value visitors overnight. Visitors 40 kilometers, I don't know, but definition we had to hold on to.
Can I just, and I don't know, because I brought this up last time, I really struggle, I really wanna make sure all of this is super transparent. In the amount of money that's being brought in, what's going where, who's receiving it. So I don't know if that gets put in here under roles and responsibilities would be. You know, release annual, biannual, whatever report. Or if that's kind of a separate discussion, or if that would go in the actual policy, is the reporting of all of this.
That was just to build on. One of the concerns I had when I started off with revisiting the minutes, there were a number of really important topics that came up last time that have not been acknowledged and not been captured in this draft, including annual reporting on funds in, funds out. There's a whole bunch of other things that I'd like to touch on, but since Jennifer brought that one up, I think it's a great example of ideas being ignored, and I just don't know why.
Maybe they didn't get captured. But I think that
Captured in the minutes, we know that.
with that type of thing for the oversight, you're talking about like an annual report to council on the map tax program in general.
Well,
spending.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, after her last meeting, I submitted a freedom of information to get. This data, and I shouldn't have to as a stakeholder, and I certainly don't think the taxpayers should have to. That information should be public information, so this is the opportunity to have it in here, because this is really what's handling the city side of this money. And I just don't know if that should go in the actual policy to make it clear that as part of this, city's responsibility is to make sure this information is available, or if that's a separate discussion.
It seems like there's a lot of administrative burdens that we're putting on the applicants in terms of what are you gonna get, proof the return on investment, et cetera. But we're not, at least in the documentation so far, the city did say local accountability in terms of what did our bait get us.
So, does it make sense to put in there? Under, I don't know, corporate leadership team. Or something about reporting of an annual report of the MAT program? Like, is that too general? Yeah, because that's gonna happen anyway, right? Like. Does it make sense? To have it in this policy?
It could be here, it could be somewhere else, but.
Where else would it be? Where else would you suggest it goes?
Well, council solicits information and reports from staff all the time on various things, so.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're not, it's not typically driven in policy.
I think the nice thing about having it in here is that way it's sure to be done, because I understand, like, I know there have been MAT reports brought to the city, but they're not consistent. So I think making it clear that this is an annual, as part of their budget strategy or whatever, there will be an update with,
Well, the other thing that occurs to me is that, like, much like the community grant program, that comes to us every year. We basically get a report. This is kind of what happens last year. This is what we're looking ahead to. Because in the end, this granting will have to be approved by council anyway. So if it's an annual exercise in doing the grant program, then would that not automatically come with a report of sorts?
Depends what level of detail. This Birmingham's referring to, I guess, because we wouldn't necessarily get into the, which accommodators contributed, which, the degrees of MAT.
No.
Which is like some of the FOI stuff that would get into that.
Right.
So. Like, it kind of just depends on what the intent or the objective is. Usually when that admission would come to council, so how I would envision it is. We have $100,000 worth of application, we report to council saying we recommend that these 10 events get funded for $100,000. Oh, and that, you know, we received $600,000 in the MAT fund last year, 300 went to Destination Stratford, 300 stayed in the reserve. We're using 100 right now, that leaves 200, like, it would all be laid out in a staff report annually as part of that.
I think there's another audience to keep in mind though, and that's the accommodators and others involved in the tourism industry. Will want to know how much MAT came in, not disclosing the property, but how much money came in. This much went to Destination Stratford of the city's share. Here are the 5 projects that were funded with the dollar amount for each one. Here's what it got us. And then there's this other pot of council discretion projects. Here's how that was spent, and here's what it got us. So if we can all look at it and go, okay, that's fair, we could do better on this next year. It shouldn't have to be something that council requests or that an innkeeper has to go file an FOA on.
I think in terms of analyzing too, as this money gets given, like the report that I got was not all that detailed, but did break it down through the month. So I'm able to compare year over year. So if we put half of this money into an event in January and we don't see any uptick in occupancy in January, then we can all look at each other and say, that didn't work. So I think that this kind of information is really good to go back and analyze along with the recipients' reports. We can go to the hard numbers. And if they say we brought in 1,000 room nights in January, we can actually go and say, well, actually, it's not reflected in the data.
How do we know if we're doing a good job? In addition to transparency, how do we know if we're spending the MAT funds in an appropriate way that is increasing tourism, if not necessarily increasing overnight stays, or both? How would we know that a year from now?
I guess there's different ways you can measure it, but one of them is to measure the amount of math you get, which we do. So, you know, and it'll take time for the program, once we get started, to be able to see what those numbers, and, you know, again, we can say, you know, this bump in the overnight stays was, you know, maybe it was a direct result of something we gave a grant for, or maybe it just was a random, you know, snowstorm and everybody in Stratford and everybody had to stay overnight for like 3 days because all the roads were closed. So
We don't remember everything.
yeah. So, but I mean, I point taken, like it's good to have reporting, but I guess what I'm saying too is that it sort of will naturally occur in some ways, but you know.
In all fairness, Jody, I would have, when we started this whole MAC discussion, I wanted to believe that, but now we're 3 years in and I'm submitting freedom of information requests to get data. So
But
unless
is it the speed of the data? Because the data does eventually come to us.
no, it doesn't, no,
Well,
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
We knew how much money was coming
and
in,
how likely is that?
but it's retroactive, right?
Of course, it's gonna be historic data.
Yeah.
But there is no reporting to any of the stakeholders who collect funds, how much has been collected and how it's been
It's
spent.
public information.
If there's no
That's-
distribution to the taxpayers, we get lots of notices saying, reminder that your filing's due, your payment's overdue, but no demonstration of how the funds were spent.
Well, any sort of report that's done would probably be presented to council, and it would be up to the stakeholders to find that information, because staff's job is to present to council the information.
Yes.
So, you know, it wouldn't be a written thing that would come back to municipal attack. Like,
Well, why can't policy, why can't it say there's a report will be presented to council and then put on the website?
yeah, well, that's what happens whenever we do a report. If
You cannot
we
get
don't
that information off the website now.
Well, once the report, yeah, it would go through a council.
No,
there's no,
but last year, 2 years ago, no, you
no,
have to go ask for it. Why can't it be part of the policy that there's gonna be no scheme analysis each fiscal year that shows how much was collected, how it was spent, and that's presented to council, and then it goes on the website.
Okay, so question for Carmen then. Thoughts on the feasibility of putting something like that in this policy, where there's an annual report, basically summarizing what's going in, what's going out of the mat. Fine. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
okay. So if that can be added into,
Do you have some concerns about that? Because you don't seem enthusiastic.
No, it's just not typically something that's built into a policy.
But where else would it be built into that it happens automatically?
I don't know.
Me neither.
So it's fine, I'm not unenthusiastic, just.
You know, enthusiastic. On a scale of 1 to 5, I'm a 3.
okay, so. We could add something like that, is it clear then what we wanna have in there, and you can decide where it goes, I think, either.
Just given we're short on time, can you share how you think you might draft something like that, just so we can react to it now versus going to another iteration?
No idea. Until I actually sit down to do it.
But I think it's important that it's roles and responsibilities feels like the right section.
Yeah.
Based off of this, right? So we know that, and
And it would be an annual report
it would
of
be an annual
the mat. Incoming and outgoing.
Incoming and outgoing broken out by grants and by council. So we can look at who spent what, where, what we get.
And
Should be fairly straightforward, I think.
That's all I was asking.
Yeah.
Could we play it back to make sure we're all on the same page? Because people are saying different things.
Yes.
and how much is left over?
Right, how much is in the reserve fund?
Okay, so roles and responsibilities, any other thoughts that in that section?
But here are you,
So I'm on the
Page
page 3 at the bottom.
yeah, so we'll go back and go through in order, because we can.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's the page of that.
So we're right, just for discussion, the committee discuss.
I think you're ahead of us.
Yeah.
On $5.
Yeah, so I'm at scope. If that makes sense.
Pardon me?
Page 4, the number 4 at the bottom of the page.
I'm just looking at the
Well,
paragraph numbers, 5.1.
You're so far ahead of us.
Oh.
I think,
No, he's
or you're on different, oh,
No, he's behind.
I'm always leaving.
I don't have mine.
So it kind of added to the discussion draft municipal accommodation and reserve fund policy.
oh, that's
They're
the agenda.
agenda, so they're in the actual policy.
Sorry,
So if you go to the actual policy and start on page, it's the bottom number is 3.
Yeah,
So they're in the roles and responsibilities section of the policy.
Is that after 5.1?
That's, so 5.1 is the broad agenda heading, and that's attached to it. So if you scroll down through your agenda to the actual attachment, which is policy. Then you are gonna wanna go past the definition section into roles and responsibilities.
Okay.
That's what it.
Great, so what I'd like to know is there's 5 or 10 bullet points under 5.1 that are scattered throughout the remainder of the document. Like the ones that are presented in 5.1, are they captured all together then?
So you're going through the policy right now. So just the draft policy, then you go to the next attachment, then you go to the next attachment.
You kind of lost me. Yeah, so what we're, okay, so 5.1, I'm going back to my agenda.
Through the chair, I believe potentially, John had made comments on his track changes copy.
Yes.
Is I think where he is, and under our, it looks like under our minutes, under 5.1. He left about 7 comments. Are those the ones you're talking about?
That's correct.
Yes, so he's looking at his document and the rest of us are looking at the agenda document, I think that's where there's some.
I'm just using the 5.1 that's in the document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
You're just in a
we're looking
different
at the
spot than
agenda.
the rest of the people.
Okay. And all I'm asking is to go through the document in order.
Yeah, so we're on scope.
John's looking, sorry, through the chair, John's looking at the document he sent in.
Yeah.
Rather than the city's document that we sent out to the group with all of his track changes. I think that's where the
The
confusion.
document that was sent out from the city has a section called 5.1. Which is a discussion of draft use of municipal accommodation tax and reserve fund.
Yeah, we're doing,
We're doing that?
yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay, good.
So, just for further clarification, the draft policy that's labeled under 5.1 is pages 6 through 37. That's the draft policy.
Of the PDF.
So, and you're, like, I'm looking at the one that you've marked up, and yours is just page numbered slightly differently, but.
Well, there's 3 page numbers on the version that was sent out from the city, so that's why I'm referring to 5.1.
So through the chair, member is referring to his comments in the draft minutes from the previous meeting.
Correct.
So we are past that, we are in the policy. And I will share it for the screen, so everyone can know where we are.
And I'm saying, can we please go back to 5.1? I've asked because we go through it in order and we jumped ahead, which is fine, so if we please go on.
So you can go through the policy, the minutes have been adopted as printed. With
minutes
slight
are done.
amendment, so minutes are done. So
So
if you can review your comments in relation to where we are in the policy and bring those up. Then that I think would make the most sense and keep everyone,
Yeah,
on
so
track.
we were all kind of swimming along, like
yeah.
you did something on page. With the number 3 printed on the bottom,
Right.
and so
Yeah, I
then
think
we
we
went
started
back to roll
4 and then we went back to 3.
Yeah, so definitions, we looked at definitions, we talked about the visitor definition. We talked about, so we've gone down roles and responsibilities, we added in the annual reporting there. So then we scroll down and you're at scope, which is revenue sharing, funding principles. And I'm looking at your notes here, direct tourism. So are you with me? Is everyone with me?
Yeah.
We're all on the same page, hopefully? So you asked a question here about the map reserve fund, so hopefully we can clarify the map reserve fund idea.
the question before that was, there's investment for event attraction, infrastructure enhancement and placemaking. See that language? I believe that's where we are under scope.
Yeah. I agree.
I think there should be some language there that aligns this policy with the agreement that's in force already between the city and Destination Stratford. That this 50% share will be spent solely on doing tourism.
Okay, so that you were saying in addition to what's there, not
Yeah.
replacing anything that's there, but in addition to it.
But yeah, I think in addition is fine, because infrastructure enhancement in the absence of any kind of framework around tourism could be interpreted in lots of different ways. There's an agreement in force with Destination Stratford that says, here's how the city's funds will be spent. Let's include that language here.
Okay.
Chair, can you clarify which section we're in? There's been a lot, no, but there's been a lot of back and forth and I.
Second paragraph in funding.
We're.
There's investments for
There.
event attraction.
Okay, so we skipped, okay, we're back to where we were.
Yeah, so we're
You're
down.
not supposed to be back.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
okay, so. Possible idea then is to, so I'm not familiar exactly with the wording of the, what? Direct tourism,
It was brought up in the last meeting and was actually part of the survey presentation that we discussed. But there's an agreement in place with Destination Stratford. That says, here's how the city's 50% share will be spent. I'm asking that language be clearly over to you.
okay, and that's probably based on the provincial regs, I'm guessing. So, does that make sense? Staff side? What we're looking for here? Investment.
I think if I have that bylaw.
I've got it here, just confirm the image.
I think I think it might be 4.4, the remaining 50% of the net eligible funds of the MAT proceeds shall be retained by the city for the sole purpose of supporting tourism throughout the city and administering the MAT. Is that,
That's it.
so on the bylaw, I think it's 11.8, it's on page 4.4.
Okay, so did somebody capture that? Added in, okay, great. All right, so. Sorry, there's so many documents open here. Okay, so priority. Intent is to maintain 50% of the city share of that funds and issues. Okay, so we talked about that already. About the intent paragraph, so we've modified that a bit.
In the annual budget section.
Annual budget section, let's next scroll down.
Yep.
Um,
It says below noted areas that support destination development, destination management, destination marketing. None of those terms are defined in this agreement, but in term of goods and product is defined. I'm wondering why we're using terms that aren't defined instead of the ones we did.
any thoughts from staff?
Should we just wait that, that's fine, we can replace that.
Or just flip it to tourism product? Sure. Okay, so. Here we have a general listing. So we're scrolling down, we've got. Sort of an overview of the possible. Events.
Yep.
In general.
Yep.
So then there's a section on the MAT funds in the reserve, within the reserve fund. So again, all of that was collected gets put in reserve, so this is. Once it lands there, the full amount, this is what happened.
And sorry, just before you skip past it, the wayfinding and signage is a little, would, in my mind, seem a little bit weak, in terms of like how to score. Would that just be a subcategory of the infrastructure enhancement and placemaking, like as opposed to its own bullet point? Is that okay to maybe collapse that down into the placemaking and infrastructure as an example? As opposed to giving it its own bullet?
You're gonna be the cat.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, I guess.
Okay,
If what we got to comments, the in-kind contribution from number 2.
yeah,
I think that's fine, I think that's nicely done the way it is, I just think that should be.
reported.
There was in-kind. MAT spending is done in kind, it's done for cash by this person, 50% of this person's salary for 3 units. Was paid for by the city as in-kind contribution. Let's report that. That there should be a specific tourism initiative that's attached to it, it should be part of the MAT reporting.
So if, in other words. So what you're saying, like part of the person's rent, like I'm just trying to think how in kind would work in the space.
So the way I interpreted it was we've got, an employee on staff, whether that's, Parks and Recreation have set up stuff and get a charge back their fee, their wages to the project. The city's not gonna absorb that, they're gonna call it a mat expense fine, but that needs to be disclosed and captured in. Right.
So with the, yeah, go ahead.
That situation is quite unlikely, we don't typically do that. If the in-kind is more for, if people are looking for facility usage for free, or they somehow wanna, or if it's a fee, it's a fixed fee that we already have. Say like, taking barricades up and down public works.
That's not Park and Rec.
Yeah, so they like those could apply, but they're not really staff time. They're more like a fee that's established by the city.
Yeah, that's not the point though, the point is if. In reporting, we're gonna say. Of the $150,000 that's in the account, the city paid in kind by donating space, donating labor, donating land. That's fine, those are in kind contributions, right? Document, what was it for, and it should be good.
So that would be part of the application, the grant recipients.
No, I'm talking about the city saying that if we're doing in kind contributions. If the city is spending its money through wages or facilities or land or anything else. And saying, we're not gonna give you that 10 grand in cash because we spent 10 grand in our payroll and labor.
Sure.
That needs to be disclosed.
That would be in their application process.
What application?
Like if they're looking for the event, they're applying for $25,000 for an event. And they, in addition to the $25,000, they're gonna have like X number of overnight stays, they're gonna do all the things in their application. And they, oh, by the way, they would like the city to put up barricades and do all this other stuff and give them the arena for free. That would all be part of their application amount.
I'm not being clear, I'm saying in the city's report on that. They're gonna say, here's how much came in, and here's how much cash we distributed out.
Right.
We also gave away $200,000 worth of in-kind contributions.
If we gave it away to an applicant, it got recorded as revenue to a department.
Right, so would there actually be a cash exchange then where we grant money to the person doing the event? And the
No.
person doing the event pays the city back?
No, it's more indirect than that. Typically, what we would do is they apply for $25,000, but it's actually $35,000 by the time we're done with all this stuff. Right? So that 25 would come out of the mat, the 10 would be recorded, it would have to be disclosed as a balancing entry to make it all work, because they're gonna get a grant, the equivalent of 35.
So earlier today, we talked about having a report from the city saying, here are our mat income, here's our mat expenses. All of this is in any kind of disbursements be captured in it.
If they're in fact part of the application, then yes. Sometimes they crop up at the last minute, and we don't actually track them.
Oh, if you don't track it, that's fine. I'm just saying, let's not have the city say, well, we gave away 50 grand in land. So therefore, we're gonna take back the 50 grand in cash that's in the reserve fund.
I see what you're saying, to like that to somehow benefit the city, so
It
you,
would be a wash to the city. We gave away land worth 50 grand and we kept cash. But to the rest of it, it's like it's smoke and mirror. Where did the 50 grand go? Oh, it was for land. What land? What? There needs to be a balancing audit trail.
I think the first question in my head is, so let's say it's for the use of a room that's $500. And I'm given this in kind, but would the city not take that $500 from the mat fund
Yeah.
and move it over?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what I was asking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so then we would wanna know
yeah,
that, yeah.
but it would be money out then. It would be money out of the, like, it would.
Well, but it is money, it's money out of the reserve,
It's money.
it's just not into my pocket, I get the room, it's, so I think.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's just about
That's
clarity.
fine. I think. It would be evident in any kind of in and out accounting, anyway.
It would be evident, not arguing with you, evident in your bookkeeping. What I'm asking for is. You give a room so that it's worth $500.
Right.
To an applicant. The city says, okay, that was worth $500. The city is gonna take $500 out of the mat reserve and put it in a general use coffer because we made an in-kind contribution worth
Right.
$500.
But
That's, let me just finish. That's in your books. I'm asking that any in-kind contribution be included with a project attached and defined in the MAC reporting, annual reporting cycle that we just discussed.
the one that we just discussed, it would be included in there because it would be part of the overall revenue in and revenue out of the MAT fund. So you would already see that.
It would already be.
So if it's $5,000
paid to the city for use of. And all I'm saying, that's great, just say for what project.
Yeah, I think my concern would be that there would just be a lump sum in-kind contributions.
That's right.
Versus Jennifer's project got $500.
I got.
I'm just curious, how would this work with the in-kind, because like for community grants. In the past, we didn't really keep track too well of in-kind, and now. It's reported and comes out of the community grants. You know, and you know, it's outside of the regular granting that we do, it would come to council to ask for it, so. To me, this seems a bit different in that, I'm just curious. How that would work then as part of this application process.
But it's not the application process.
Yeah, so I would think, in my mind, the way this would be easiest to work, which I think maybe is what you were saying, is like if you had the $25,000 project and. So we grant that money that comes out of the MAT fund. To the person. If they wanted to use, say, the auditorium and it was $1,000. Would we then just hold back that additional $1,000, or would we give them the 25,000 and ask them to pay back the
We would
rent?
hold it back, but we would give it to the community services rental rent revenue.
Right, okay, so we go internally to community services.
Yes.
And
But if you're asking
Yeah.
for a project by project accounting, that's a different type of reporting than what we've previously talked about.
And I think what we're saying is transparency is paramount.
Right, so if there's any in kind, then there could be a listing, this is not how much it was,
That's all.
and this is room rentals.
Perfect.
Yeah, or like where it went to community services in general for their room, park, whatever. Okay,
Can we talk about this following basic principles that a tourism initiative project must meet? That sentence, unless there's stuff before that, then anybody else wants to talk.
okay, I'm just. Just making sure I'm on the same page,
Yes, so I'm not sure what page it is.
okay,
It's right under the little section there,
yeah,
says all their basic principles, right?
okay, so the bulleted section. Following basic principles, demonstrated. Okay. So your thoughts on that?
I think that the policy should reflect the legal principle that's come up in relation to the regulation and in court cases. Around if tourism disappeared, this expense still be necessary. And if it's still necessary, then it's not tourism.
Right. I think it's tricky though, if necessary or not. Like, for instance, if you said, first of all, it's not a large enough amount to do basic municipal infrastructure, like we're talking, maybe we could paint bike lane.
But then
But let's say that bike lane, would be really great for tourism because it, connects to certain parts of the city and we could do further enhance tourism.
Great.
It would also help people who live here who are cyclists, so but are either one necessary? Probably not, so that the criteria of necessary might be a little tricky. I think.
There's legal language that's setting litmus test. Basically. there should be some language here that says. We're gonna spend MAT on things that are included in tourism oriented, direct tourism. As opposed to pet projects, or we have a budget shortfall and other stuff. There is no language here that would feet to the fire and say that this money is for tourism.
Except the fact that it's, excuse me, through the chair, except for the fact that it's gets deposited into a reserve fund, which is governed by provincial legislation, the Municipal Act, and all of our other policies for reserve funds.
So there hasn't been any spending of MAT money up to this point that isn't tourism related.
Correct.
Really?
Yeah.
So, affordable housing, is it?
Tourism related.
Explain that.
I can't right now.
Council list, but it, you know, since we brought that forward, so the thought was that, you know, we need people to be able to work in the tourism industry, we need to be able to have them afford to live here. So that was the thread that was drawn between the two, so. It's
So is that affordable housing then, sort of restricted to hospitality workers? Tourism workers?
It wouldn't be, it would just be a general, we need people to be able to live in the downtown and work here.
And that's where the document needs to prevent that kind of thing from happening, or make the argument much more transparent for others to weigh in and participate in that.
And the amounts, I will go back to the amounts being,
How much was that amount?
150,000.
yeah, so, but there won't be that same. In other words, it's a small amount as far as
Then why-
infrastructure projects and stuff. Well, we did it because it's money sitting there and it will indirectly help tourism. Maybe you can't argue a direct, but I guess getting back to this policy, again, like we can write in additional language that points more specifically. It's not to say that council has to do it in the end.
No,
I'm just saying, like, that it's the way it is, as long as we follow the provincial regulations. Then we're okay, but absolutely, if we wanna add in additional, more specific language, we can, for sure.
and that's what I'm asking for, because I think the advantage is if. Council has this sovereign, they can change whatever they want, I got that. But let's get a policy put down that. Represents the opinions of this group, if council doesn't want to follow it, that's fine. But we will have had our opportunity to say our piece, and council can explain why they didn't like it, and then we can take that back to our constituents and explain why that happened.
So. Direct recommendations of say, we have initiatives support investment in tourism related infrastructure to help more effectively manage tourism to the benefit of residents and visitors, so is that bullet point good? Or,
I'm backing up to principles that tourism initiatives and projects must meet and demonstrate the following
okay,
in
so the volume,
compliance with the direct tourism commitment the city has already made. Direct tourism commitment the city has already made.
if you got that, choose then. Are you good with that? Okay, so the bullet points are okay.
Yeah, the only comment I was gonna make is on the very last bullet point, initiative support the promotion of the city of Stratford as a leading destination for tourism. That is like the best bullet point in the whole thing, but it's buried so deeply and then never comes to life in the scorecard. Which is why I keep coming back, so you would. What's really gonna have a life of its own or enduring life after this process is the scorecard. Scorecard doesn't line up the document.
So, but we got room scorecard to make some adjustments there. So we have room in the scorecard to make some adjustments. And we could also move this bullet point to the top of the list, if that would, it would help if that's the first thing we want to eat.
Great.
But that's okay, we'll just move it up.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, next section is the grant funding programs. And so again, sort of general overview. Bullet points,
I don't have any comments on this, does anybody else?
major events. So the major events that I actually had a question about how we define that. Exactly, I can't remember if it was. We had that up in the top of the definitions, I just that, like.
So going back to some of the comments that we gave earlier, why do we need a major event definition?
I think, sorry, I think at one point we had talked about, and I can't remember where we landed, that those major events would have a more robust reporting requirement at the end. But maybe it's not major and minor, it's the amount of money you get.
My thought was that from the way I read the document was anything over 25,000
So put it in the
or
record.
25,000 above is major. Is that, am I?
I think that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay,
But if that's the case, shouldn't it just be in the reporting requirements for the applicant? If you're requesting over 25 grams, you'd be aware that the reporting requirements and the risk mitigation efforts are gonna escalate.
I think we did capture that in the scorecard comments.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think there were, which would be. I was thinking for clarity, maybe in the scorecard, we could have like. At the top, like there's one in particular that's like. The normal requirements, and then underneath it could be like, for major events, these are the additional things. I think it might have been just order wise to split on, but.
But you'd want to echo that in the applicant's materials, right? To say if you're asking for this much money, be prepared, be informed that here are the other. We want a credit check. There's some other reporting requirements that will.
So if you kind of talk about that in the application form that was drafted as well.
Right.
But. So, and to your point, Councilor Ravak, the comment around like, these are the basic criteria and these ones are extra. It doesn't quite work like that on the scoring because you have to get a certain level of scoring to trigger the next level anyway.
Right.
So I think. Like if they don't meet. If they don't get a minimum score, like in the beginning, they're not gonna meet the ability to get under 25.
That's great.
Or is there some way you can say, be aware that if you were planning to ask for more than 25,000. This is critical that you know, this is a critical element or something to that effect to say, you know, this like these ones here are the things that we're, you know, just to give people a chance to understand what they need to be emphasizing to be able to get more money. We want to see more of this.
Want to see more of these business case arguments, but we also want you to be aware of what commitments we're going to ask you to make, because it's a sensible fund.
Right. Right, so that in the application, we can say, if you're going to be applying for, there will be more requirements for reporting that. Okay, so.
Sorry, can I just ask, and it may just be a layout thing, so major events is bolded. And then does that section, does everything after that apply just to major events and we get to the next bolded, which is program eligibility? Because that's how I would read that, and I'm not sure that was the intent.
I think there was.
Because it's additional requirement. An event must meet the following additional criteria, so that's only a major event would
But when you
meet the following additional criteria, or is it any of this?
doesn't a minor event need to be open to the public, accessible and welcoming?
I think the major, sorry, Jennifer, the major event is it's bolded just because it's kind of a definition or it probably shouldn't be bolded. Or it should be.
Or maybe you bring that section to the very end of there, so it doesn't, because the way I read that is that only applies to major events, which makes that last bit about minimum grant funding. Not make sense, because everyone needs the insurance and everything, so I think that's just the layout
There's
thing.
really good stuff there that would apply to.
Yeah.
Right, so if we're gonna say, if you're a major event, here's how the reporting and other commitments escalate, just make that the event, like a major event clause.
Or just take out additional. All this criteria.
An event must meet the following criteria, just take out the initial part.
All events must meet the following criteria.
Okay, so and the demonstrated visitor audience of 25% or more, was that specific to a major event or any event? As any event, I'm assuming.
I will talk about that when we get in.
Okay.
Where did the 25% come from?
That's actually changed over time, because it was 50% in version 1. And 50% in version 2.
I think it was just when I started looking at other ones too, I thought 50% would be unachievable in some cases.
I think having a tourism fund where way less than half of the participants are tourists, that's not a tourism initiative, that's a local initiative that happens to attract a few out of towners. How can you say that when it's a quarter of the participants are tourists, that it's a tourism initiative?
I think, and again, it wasn't really the intent to make it local. It was more that it was gonna be difficult for the smaller events to demonstrate it.
So I wonder, rather than make that part of the criteria that is covered off in the, what do we call it? Our scorecard.
Okay.
Sorry, so you don't really have any pros and cons an event must section.
Yeah, that's what they would get more points if they have more percentage.
Yeah, but I think philosophically, we should agree that a quarter of participants is not enough. It's not a tourism event, but it's way less than half. You don't want to put a percent attached to it, or we think that that's too aggressive, say primarily.
That's good, so.
Events are geared primarily to attract out of town visitors.
Okay, so remove that bullet and replace it with.
Something like that.
No,
Or
town.
increase the percentage to say 50% plus.
Right. Yeah, is it, so Carmen, for that one, would it be the demonstrating part that, like, the actual collecting of the information is the challenge, really,
It's as much of a challenge at 50% as it is at 25%.
yeah. So we're gonna remove the requirement to demonstrate the amount of visitors.
I think the lead says must meet the following criteria.
Right.
A demonstration of driving and out of town visitors are primarily focused on out of town visitors.
Right,
And you
focus on attracting
emphasizing it.
overnight visitors. Or out.
It wasn't even overnight yet.
Right.
It was just 40 kilometers plus. Extensively geared toward primarily targeting.
Okay. So demonstrated. What is this thing? So a
an event must meet the following criteria. Primary focus on town visitors. Targeted visitor to target, primary targeting.
Yeah, because what you're trying to do is say, you're not putting on something that's gonna attract people around here that are not even gonna stay overnight, it's.
I think that's great.
Yeah, so if you're targeting, if you're demonstrating that you're targeting people outside.
That's a great one.
Okay, so we got the nuances there recorded, I think.
You still want to keep it at 25?
Or no, we're gonna say it.
Get the percentage.
And something. I understand the point that it's very difficult to calculate.
Yeah.
But 25% is just sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and the remainder of the bullet points are good, I think.
Yeah.
So. This is the part that I also found wasn't super clear, was the. Says minimum mat grant request, so it's 2,500 to maximum of 25,000. Excluding potential major events, so I don't know, I just found the language around.
I agree with you, that it seems like that there may in the scorecard be, and it's not like the scorecard is the be all and end all, right? If the scorecard, or if a candidate comes in and asks for 50 grand. And their scorecard goes, well, I imagine there's still some follow-up discussion that happened before that big a grant was made.
Right, so at the bottom here, we're going to also. Put the little definition of a major event. Under that, so. A minimum and a maximum. So that's why I'm thinking like there's like the regular stream and then to know you're. You know, that you are applying for a major grant event, like so it's a 2 tiers in that funding way. I don't know how to express that well, but.
Well, you could just say like regular MAP grant or minor MAP grant and funding requests. Include those between 2,500 and 25,000 major. Like I think you can just say, this is this and this is this.
Right.
I agree.
And then follow up with the major events are required to have additional criteria, need additional criteria.
Yeah, that would be fair.
Right.
Does there need to be a ceiling on that major? Could we have a ceiling on minor? I don't know.
$1 million.
Yeah, can they clean up the fund if it's a really amazing thing, or do we just sort of say, you know, the major is 25 to 100, something?
I think as long as the scrutiny escalates with the fund, absolutely. Cirque du Soleil was,
Yeah.
they want $100,000.
Yeah, so you know, we're not going to put a ceiling on this. We're just saying it's major is over 25,000, and you better bring your A game.
And I think the note on there is too. Their funding request can exceed 50% of total eligible budgeted expenses, so that's kind of supports as well.
That is.
So yeah, if we didn't have a ceiling and somebody wanted to invest $150,000 in our community and to demonstrate that they were doing that, then maybe then we give them all the money. Possibly.
For sure.
Okay, so is that kind of clear then? Do we have like a
For that section,
a level 1 grant and level 2? I don't know how you word it, but
instead of calling it minor, which is kind of.
I don't like minor wagers.
What about standard versus extraordinary?
Standard versus
Extraordinary,
extra.
extra special.
What do you think?
I struggled with this major minor thing because. Niagara on the Lake said that was one of their biggest problems with their policy. The major minor distinction, they found that caused a lot of turning points for applicants and for administration. So I was trying to avoid the tiers, right, for that very reason. We can still get to the same outcomes by having our scorecard structured properly. So we kind of tier it as we score it. But to have it split between And so I think what I was trying to do is to say, this is our standard criteria for all the applications. But we will consider a major event greater than $25,000 with under certain circumstances.
Additional scrutiny and
Right.
documentation.
That's,
Okay.
but if it's not clear or it's gonna cause tripping, then I'm happy to revisit it.
Do you know a little bit more about what caused the tripping?
The idea between major and minor having different criteria.
So first is just
Yeah.
additional criteria. So would additional criteria
Well,
acceptable?
it was also that too.
So additional report, we were talking about additional reporting and then having better, like a higher score of a certain amount or a higher.
Right.
Percentage-wise. So those were the two things that I think. For the major, so it wouldn't be a big,
It's not a huge difference, that's why I'm trying to minimize the differences.
yeah, so I like the wording that you suggested about, so you can say, you know, a minimum. Request of this, a maximum of this, but we will, you know. Events exceeding $25,000 would be considered a major event and it would
Be subject to additional.
be subject to
Right.
additional.
Yeah.
Evaluation.
Or reporting and evaluation and reporting.
Well, I think in essence, if you say, Matt grants, because the minimum is throwing me off a little bit too. Matt grant funding requests begin at $2,500. Requests over 25,000 are subject to additional scrutiny or something like that. Like, I don't know that you need to put that minimum maximum, but say we start at 2,500. Requests of over 25,000 receive additional scrutiny.
Sure.
However, something.
Yeah.
Less words.
There we go. And then we avoid sort of labeling things maybe unnecessarily, possibly. But we still have the section called major events that we're gonna bump out underneath. So. We could just say an event. Well, an event over, or event request over $25,000. Needs to have a substantial visitor economic and reputational impact on Stratford. And wait, yeah, so it's kind of a
That's
simple,
why I tried in the. Yeah.
it's just different wording.
It's great.
Okay. So are we, everybody clear on what's gonna happen with that? I don't know if we're ready yet.
Major later.
Maybe
You're
gone, you're not inviting, you're not. Pegging people or pigeonholing them. Okay, program eligibility. We have. Yeah, that all looks good.
No evaluation.
That's next. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're. Yeah, we're just approaching evaluation, well, maybe we're approaching evaluation. Right, so there's another little note here about. Major and. Minor. No, meeting the criteria above is the minimum threshold for being considered a major event, and as a result, not all events that meet the criteria are deemed major. Nor are any projects guaranteed funding.
That bullet or that note should go above the major.
Yeah,
Obviously that.
yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we've arrived at grants and funding, program evaluation and awards, evaluation and assessment. Evaluations of application across the line, the expectation of and address. So there's a list. And. You had a comment about.
To me, this is, in a couple of earlier places that I had mentioned, how powerful and effective the language was. It feels like we take a step back here because there's no explicit driving incremental visits to Stratford? Isn't that like number one? Because it was so eloquently expressed elsewhere. I'm just wondering why there's no mention to driving traffic, and in particular driving overnight visitors. Why is that not part of the evaluation and assessment?
So can we add in that bullet point at the top? Yeah. That drives incremental visits to Stratford with special emphasis on the space.
Love it.
Okay, so. Your experience, so here we have a definition of the shoulder season. Right, we discussed the last time.
Fantastic.
And I actually have the handy dandy data. So it's interesting, really the only 2 months, are August and September that I don't think anyone needs any help with. August, we're at 65.73% occupancy, which is also incidentally below the entire year occupancy for the province. Yes, yeah. September's at roughly 60% occupancy, but if we're looking, July's only at 54, October's at 47. So I would argue that all we put in here is really anything outside of August and September.
But you didn't want the January, February last time.
I agree.
You said, you know,
Yeah, I mean, those are,
open but not full was or something like that.
yeah, so January's at 26, February's at 28, but I mean, with weather what it is, with travel what it is, I think it's unless we have a huge pot of money, I think with what little we have, we need to focus on the May, June, July, and October.
There was another consideration, Jennifer. Wasn't just the room occupancy. It was also talking about sustaining businesses that were teetering in the shoulder season,
Yeah.
like April, May, or
Exactly.
going to stay open in November. So everybody's open in July. Who's going to be open?
Yeah,
I think where we need to provide more volume to not just accommodators, but restaurants, retail, and everything else is in
May, June.
in the months where they're debating whether or not to open. And I think to me, that's April, May. At least, like, we don't open until May because there's not enough in April. But if there was suddenly an influx of people in April, we would open.
But I would also argue, and this would be a great time to have input from restaurants, because I would argue that I open in April, I hire staff, and then I don't have any hours to give them in May and June. So I think maybe we start
Yeah, it's for short term.
small and then expand as May gets full, then absolutely work back into April.
That makes sense. So then the strategy is to build the shoulders instead of trying to correct a deficit.
Okay, so how is that different than what is written here with the defining of the shoulder season?
May and June, November, December being the target.
Yeah,
months.
Yeah, I would maybe just change that to May and June and October and November.
October, really? October's a busiest month.
October's at 47% occupancy. It's the same as May.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the method for those months for being chosen like that and to building it that way was strictly just looking at that bar chart to show like the top 4 months and then picking the next 2 on either side of it. That was the method. That's not, again, as an overall accommodation trend, that's what the data is showing. Is there are the top.
I think that's smart.
Maybe for me, it's just the language, because those are not the 4 highest accommodation months. So maybe just removing that, completely and say, where's the, so looking at the shoulder season is characterized by, oh, okay, so that actually, we can just say shoulder season is considered May, June, October, November, December. I don't know.
Yeah, I will stop before December.
Oh, yeah, yeah, well. Yeah,
But the-
December's 38% capacity.
Yeah, because the weather and other activities, we're gonna be spending our money, then there's no fish biting.
Also holiday season though, so there's opportunity, but I would be game to say, again, we start kind of concentrated and then as we build,
That's great, so your logic would then say June, then November, then May, then December, is that what you're saying?
no, I don't think we're ranking them, are we?
I don't understand why you're suggesting that December should stay.
Because I have a business that needs to make money in December.
Well,
I mean,
they have all this to make money.
yeah, this is the,
So, but narrowing it down to this, like, point I'll take you through the last meeting where you were saying, don't concentrate on January, February,
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
Like, so this sort of hits the mark.
I'm happy with this.
With this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and whether it truly is the highest score or not, then it's in the ballpark.
Yep.
So we kind of wanna stay away from
Peace.
kind of basically when festival visitors are here,
Mhm.
more or less, right, for
When
this.
the festival season is running. on
Yes,
December,
and it's-
once they start dropping place.
Exactly, yeah. So then this shoulder season can,
I think
You
you're right,
mentioned that.
Jennifer, that other accommodators and other restaurants, retailers, et cetera, don't necessarily all follow the same pattern. Um, For example, well over half of the these are closed, so there's not gonna be any benefit there. I understand we're opposed to that, makes sense.
no, but also realistically, the biggest contributors to Matt are the hotels. Right? So if we're looking at things that can bring in Matt, then a really great holiday event could have a huge impact.
Good,
Not for you, but for
I'm not saying for,
Foster's and for Mercer and for me and Bentley's, like all those places that
I'm not arguing who's open and closed, I'm arguing that you won't be able to move the needle in December.
right, well, we'll find out, I guess.
Yep.
So let's leave it as it is, I think. And move along to. We've got agreement. Reporting requirements.
Excuse me, just priority would be given to just back before, well, last sentence before agreement. Priority would be given to projects that can demonstrate their mechanism up above. Where did the 20%?
Oh, 10%, okay.
Typo.
Yeah, so again, I don't know if you need a percentage number, but I do think this is another great sentence that doesn't get brought to life in the criteria, the actual weighting.
Extended stays at local accommodations and just leave it at that, the period at accommodations.
Yeah.
And the
Fine with that.
rest of it,
But I would like to put in that that should be brought to light on Explorer.
so we've got an agreement, we've got reporting requirements, awards. So. Your events, so we have again major events referred to in there, so we'll have to just make sure that our language all ties in. Procedure, I think is all pretty straightforward. What do we have here? Terms and conditions, awards. Ineligible, so ineligible, it's kind of it. Programs, projects, or initiatives that are considered part of city of Stratford purposes and relevant to tourism or economic development shall not receive funding through the map reserve fund without prior authorization by council that the funds may be used for a non-tourism related purpose. So I don't know.
That's not acceptable, I don't
We don't
think.
wear that.
I don't know either, I'll take it out.
Yeah, I think it's just goofed up. Examples, ineligible, okay, we went on that.
And the examples thing, when we were talking about the in-kind, we were talking about buildings and things like that, but that's number 3 is buildings and other permits.
Right, so that would be in kind.
I read that as building permits,
Oh,
like
building
building,
permits,
building
yeah.
and other.
Okay.
Right, there's just some formatting funkiness there. City of Stratford fees and procedures, special event permits, staff times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so staff times, that's depending on staff time for special event permits or staff time for putting out stuff on the road. Maybe that's.
That's included in kind though, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah, so that's,
I'll remove the reference to staff time, I'll find a different example.
okay. Okay, so reserve fund. So we would just say we're using reserve fund policy. Interesting.
What is that only? Council may disperse funds only based on the principles of this policy.
I don't know, can we be that prescriptive? But we add in an only.
I would, so through the chair, I would recommend not just saying only because there may be come up or changes in legislation that may come up that we may have to amend the policy, so. I would maybe just add, if you want to add some additional language, I wouldn't restrict it to only.
Council may disperse funding based on the principles of this policy alone.
Some fun principles as well.
May imply may not.
I don't,
If there's a change in legislation, wouldn't all policies be up for being revisited?
well, it depends, like if we were talking about the MAT. Specific policy or the MAT specific reserve fund, or we have reserve fund policies that are. For all our reserve funds, so I guess there's different policies that can. Apply, but here we're talking about the reserve fund policy. I read the collected consequences of this policy.
So that was the intent of that statement is really to address earlier concerns that council can do whatever they want with the money. That's not what I'm trying to say that they can't, but if they're within the confines of this policy, they can. They can't go and build a road or give it to housing or whatever, but the thing's gonna be, as long as it conforms with the principles of this policy, then that's how they're required to spend their any remaining residual funds that are in the reserve.
Doesn't council may disperse also imply council may disperse funds that do not? May doesn't mean required. May means can and cannot. Which is why if you put may only, then it accomplishes what you're saying.
You could maybe say, funding dispersed by council must be based on the funding principles.
We can council all go together and just say all funding dispersed must comply with this policy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds right.
Okay, so now we've got to the scorecard and we're almost at that fast, so we're gonna be. expedient.
Since we are at 5 minutes, is there a discussion about requesting additional sections before I was thinking there was a lot of all the answers in my. I don't think.
I'm just looking through them. Here, after your comments on, so were there a lot of things that you were changing on the scorecard or not discussion? Or is it just the pointage, or the points?
The pointage at the bottom.
Because I think we can probably get through that. right?
Yeah, but so how does that work mechanically in terms of feedback on the survey? Reviewing a next iteration of policy, how does all that happen before it goes to council?
Feedback on,
There's a survey.
Oh, yes.
Of the document.
yeah,
This is through the chair, so I believe it's item 5.2 on the agenda is public engagement and activities discussion. So again, we are approaching 5 o'clock, so the committee can discuss whether they would like to request additional meeting. I would recommend taking into account that we're likely gonna have to post a survey for at least 3 weeks. You may want to see an additional version of the policy, then you may want to discuss the final report that is to go to council.
I think that's a good idea.
so it may be a good idea to have another meeting.
Well, to request a couple.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
So you want to make a motion?
Thanks.
Yeah, so what do you recommend to the? What do you recommend for motion for a couple of meetings?
Yeah, so it could be that the Matt Ad Hoc Committee requests. Gonna say 2 meetings, that would give you, so 1 meeting would be scheduled after we've released the survey. And then we could potentially add the next iteration of the policy on that agenda. And then you could have a final meeting, which is where you would discuss the report and then final edits to your overall recommendation, which would then go to council.
How's that sound?
I love all of it. The only request I would have is with subsequent requests to follow as needed.
We can get to those requests when we get to them.
Yeah.
It's the way we're doing now, so.
Makes us look like idiots that we couldn't plan whether we needed 2 or 5.
No. I think we'll get it done too.
Or we'll request them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. I think it's fine.
Disagree.
Okay. Who would like to make that motion? So eloquent to state that,
Like that motion. but it's from-
John's not gonna make a motion.
I will make the motion, but I can't tell you what you said. You just, whatever you said.
You should trust
How's that?
Basically, you're asking for 2 more meetings.
Right,
To
perfect.
to do stuff.
Not only 2, not only 2.
And we're not, doesn't mean we're gonna be
Right.
ultimately not able to ask for any
Right.
more after that.
2 for now.
So through the chair, would the committee like 2 to 3 meetings, and then if a 3rd meeting is not required, we just wouldn't hold it?
There you go. Well,
Would that
Fair.
be reasonable?
yes,
3?
I would like to move that back.
Okay, well, Judge will be.
I like to say.
But, okay, if there's no further discussion on that, I'm, all in favor? That's everybody, okay, great. So I guess we need to decide, we have enough time to at least do some scorecard discussion today? And then we'll leave the survey,
Wait,
or do we wanna?
is the survey going out before the next meeting?
Yeah, that's the next thing, maybe we need to jump to the survey,
I think so.
and then we can figure out this scorecard part, because it doesn't need to be finished for the survey to be complete and posted. Okay, so we'll pop over then to item 5.2, which is the engagement of consultation. So, I'm just yeah. Yeah, it's, I had a good system, so. Those numbers help, okay. Here we are, look at that. So. Thoughts or comments on the survey questions, I think we've honed in. A little bit more, but there were some comments about survey, how about I ask before you. Charge ahead, we'll see, does anybody else have thoughts that they wanted to give on the survey? In general?
Let's see.
Okay, so. Your thoughts are probably in a different PDF, but anyway, go ahead, let us know what your thoughts are.
So overall, I thought that there was really good stuff here. There are some mechanical things just from a research methodology standpoint that I'd like to touch on. And then my bigger concern is the language is not very accessible. Throughout, the language tends to err on the, what I would describe as corporate or bureaucratic, and is less plain spoken. I think we're gonna lose people, or they're going to interpret things that we don't necessarily want them to interpret. So for example, regarding a proposed application-driven model that would allow event organizers to apply for funding designed for the city, emphasis on projects and initiatives that lead to a grant, nobody's gonna understand. Right? It's like the city's formed this ad hoc committee to determine how we spend that. We'd like to get your opinion on it. If you want to say more about it, that's great, but make it, like a 30-second.
But we wanna tell them that we're proposing that there will be a
No problem.
application or a grant program that you can apply for.
Yep, no
Or
problem.
that people can apply for specific events, so, okay,
Yep,
so.
we want your
Yeah,
feedback,
let's
is this grant program?
Bring it down a couple of grade levels,
Yep,
wording.
yep. Next point is question number 1, business owners excluding accommodation providers. If there's second, that's fine. I would strongly suggest that we break that into more categories because I think there will be divergence of opinion. And if you only ask for one bucket, you'll never be able to tease them apart to say restaurant operators thought this, retailers thought this, accommodators, etc.
And we want also, well, yeah, so I guess.
Yeah.
Well, business could be anything, it could be also
Well, yes.
somebody on the factory or.
That was the second point that I made here, a restaurant owner versus a driveway. They equally informed about that, do they have vested interest?
Do we have the capability, rather than like inventing a whole bunch of categories, can we put like, they can click business owner and then write in? No, we don't have that,
No,
like the other,
they'll never be able to aggregate them back again, because everybody will use different websites.
right, okay, so if we were to do categories, we'd say. Restaurant, and we only want to know if they're owners. Or we wanting like,
As opposed to like a restaurant manager that's not an owner.
yeah, that's, you can get every. So we only wanna hear from like stakeholders, like owners and, okay,
I think
so restaurants,
Operator.
retail, yeah, operators, some of that. This-
You could do like business owner, restaurants, business owner, retail, business owner, other services.
okay. So those are broad enough categories, yeah. Less is more, I know, it's easier to.
That was the other overarching comment I was gonna make in general with market research, you really can't rely on numbers with less than 100 sample size in each bucket.
I know,
Okay, good.
but he's getting those people that,
Right. The danger is you get 3 people to reply and you can throw around statistics and 66% agree with them.
right?
And just make that point.
So, like, I'm just thinking back to this whole thing about business owner, like, if somebody manages a business. Like a restaurant, do we want their input? And do we want it segregated from? What an owner would think,
Or at what point do they become less of a business person and more of a resident? Right, because they could always check off the resident box.
yeah,
Like operator,
operator,
like you just have some visual changes.
business, yeah, like a restaurant,
Every
business operator.
high-end restaurant.
Is there operators?
Oh.
Yeah, operators that, no,
It's a loaded term, it's kind of like the major minor,
okay,
it sounds like McDonald's franchisee.
but we do have some franchisees.
Great, but they're not all franchisees, and I'm just saying operator is a loaded term.
How about business owner slash operator?
Right.
Then we can cover everything.
And
Okay, so categories being restaurant, retail, and other,
service.
service. And then other. Okay.
Great.
Great.
That's more for our use.
Okay, so any other comments about other questions?
Yes. But I will let others go first.
Okay,
I'm gonna keep going with the rugby number 2. Are you familiar with the concept of municipal occupation tax? Two points here. Number one, how are we gonna interpret? Like, what's that gonna do for us? Question number one. Question number 2, or suggestion is, instead of familiarity, I would ask the level of conviction or knowledge about it. As opposed to, are you familiar with it? Do you have a strong opinion about how that should be collected and dispersed? Point number 3, we have asymmetrical questions here where you've got 5-point scale and then you've got this 3-point scale. And we need to be very careful to use consistent question architecture for the results to be consistent. Otherwise, you're flip-flopping and you're leading. I just don't understand what familiar with the concept of what does that get us? What knowledge does that impart to us?
You strike it?
Strike it, or do you have strong opinions about that?
Well, what does that get us?
If 90% of the people say no, I don't give a rat's ass, and that tells us something. They don't care. Not knowing or not knowing is a different question. And if 90% say they don't know, then does that mean, okay, we need to do an awareness building?
but if people don't care, it also doesn't affect.
What's that?
It doesn't really affect the policy whether 90% of people care.
If then you're not worried about constituent. When people don't care, that's very different than 90% of the people not knowing.
I suppose, but either way, is it gonna affect our work in the end?
Then that's trying to question.
Yeah, I think we get rid of.
Yeah, it's neat to, you need to know, but it's really
Need to know questions.
Okay,
Uh,
less is more.
I think that number 3 has a little bit of a risk of misunderstanding because we've got tourism related events that result in overnight stays, tourism related events and activities of any kind. I think that was meant to be in contrast to overnight. I think we should be more specific and say tourism events and activities that draw day visitors versus overnight visitors. Of any kind is like, what does that mean?
Okay, I'm just trying to think because some events will be both. So how do we capture that?
Which is why it's got to select all of the apply.
So,
The problem with select all that apply, and I agree, it should be select all that apply. You can't have a combination of all of the above and a select all that apply because it will confuse people. Right, have one or the other, but not both. If you select all that apply, I don't need a combination of all of the above.
I don't think we can have that option in our two.
Which option?
That's select all that apply.
okay, so we'll just get rid of that part and then the combination of all the above will fill in for that.
That's why it says the combination of all of the above.
Yeah, but why does it say select all that apply?
Let's forget about the Y.
We'll get rid of
It should
Typo.
Typo.
just erase that.
Yeah, we'll just get rid of that, select all and apply.
Well, and I would be concerned then, because maybe I agree with the 2 tourism related things, but not the amount in reserve, so my combination is 2 of those.
So you can pick other special.
Break it into 2 or 3 questions, 2 or 3 separate questions. How do you feel about overnight events? How do you feel about day tripping events? How do you feel about larger initiatives? With the 5-point scale that you've already established. Combination of all of the above is just It's just setting us up for endless debate about how to interpret that data.
I think multiple questions that are shorter, simpler is a good idea.
So on like the Likert scale then of the,
The 5-point scale that we've used before, I believe the city should spend its 50% portion on tourism related overnight stays. Strongly disagreed, strongly agreed.
okay,
Tourism day trip events, strongly agree to disagree. I have no problem with larger initiatives because nobody's gonna know what that is. Very few people are gonna know what that is, or they're
what
gonna
about
interpret.
larger events?
I think it's dangerous when you ask people to use their imagination to fill in your question. So is a larger initiative a bridge?
It was more for a reserve, right?
Saving money for,
First.
I think we have to say events.
That's fine.
Well, then give an example or a few examples.
Yeah,
Larger events like a political convention,
Yeah.
like a motocross race.
Bad Bunny.
What's that?
Bad Bunny.
Like,
for large, yeah. I guess the question's getting at, do we want to, you know, be socking away this money for bigger things, but
all I'm asking is,
defining the bigger thing.
yeah, so that people know what we're talking about, and like, well, I
For
thought like.
instance, such as conference or. I don't know,
Large size, no.
pick the color.
That's the problem, is if you don't know, then. Joe Schmo is gonna have no idea.
Or we could say, place the amount in reserve for future events. Or future initiatives or future tourism related spending.
Place the funds in reserve for future
To save for future
large tourist events.
initiatives, large tourist initiatives.
Right.
That.
Better tourism is important.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I think the idea of saving it. For the
Yes.
future is kind of maybe the point there.
yeah, that's a key concept.
Or maybe people think that you shouldn't spend it on, 50 little $2,500 events. We need something big to put us on the map type of thing.
Okay,
Emotion.
so are we good on that? Clear?
So there's 3 questions instead of 1.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we deleted it before, so we're get to.
Okay.
So do we give people the opportunity to do an other? So they can put in their own thing? Or we're just giving them those 3?
We were gonna split it into 3 separate questions.
No, I realize that, but
It was the option, other to specify.
I don't mind that because we are leading them towards specifically events, and we have already discussed how this could be used for all things besides a specific event.
yeah, because if you, everyone will have a pet project on it other than how do you corral them into something.
It's also not to apply, like,
Yeah.
somebody might come up with a great idea, like, wow, we never thought of that.
That's true.
Yeah, it's more for our
Yeah.
writing policy purposes than a statistic.
Through the chair, the very last question will be, do you have any other questions, comments, suggestions, and it's
Right.
just, like a box that people can fill in, so they add it there.
Okay.
If that makes sense, so you go through all the questions and then there, here's my great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's,
Get even put
yeah,
ideas,
it's
you know,
actually, a really-
brain waves.
it's actually a really good point that. It's a great opportunity, not now, in the future, to do a concept, to find out where the interest level is, for what kinds of
Right.
things should we solicit.
Yeah,
Nothing.
I did wanna circle back though, we are leading this, we're assuming the conclusion is exclusively events by only asking about events, and so that's where I do feel like there's something missing about placemaking, making this. So that's more passive.
should we put initiatives?
Question,
Why would it,
well, if somebody's really hot to travel and having signage, they would volunteer.
but I guess we've sort of narrowed it down to events with, with we sort of set our priorities by shaping questions specifically around that thing. So I don't know why they would think that we would be open to other ideas and then have some, contribute some genius thing that we wish
We put events and or slash initiatives. So would that open it up enough? If tourism related kind of has to be in there, but
Yes, Chair, so in the policy, there were those specific sections which you talk about placemaking, infrastructure and sports. Would it be better to have the different questions specifically on that, including like tourism related events? So you can see whether people are strongly agreeing with these various statements that kind of link to your actual policy.
I think as long as each one is couched in the term of tourism, and yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I might have to go look at.
yeah, like they, so. Yeah, people were like, oh yeah, I'll go the sports thing, and then they could go strongly agree for that, and then maybe the wayfinding, they're like, yeah, disagree. You know, we get an idea of maybe where the projects, interest of projects might fall. That's a good idea, I think.
I just keep thinking about the BIA art installations, there was those all over the place. Somebody's gonna want that. Great, so that's not a good opinion, okay.
Right. So, yeah, is there a way to do that instead of doing this, we would just say these are the 4 broad categories.
It could be tourism related events that drive overnight, tourism related events for day visits, tourism events related to sport, tourism events related to culture.
Yeah, it was like placemaking, there was things like an example of wayfinding, yeah.
Product development.
Refer to those, yeah.
But I think the first 2 that are up there are really important.
Yeah.
I have 2 separate questions and then add sport, culture, whatever the other.
You have to be a fair question though, right? Because
Right.
there's the, like, you know, like you could have the ones that result in overnight stays that are also sports. Like, so you gotta look, if you know, people won't be able to choose both.
Yeah, correct.
That's the question.
Yeah.
No, these are separate questions.
We're gonna,
These are, but to your point, they're all very show. To what extent do you support each one of these?
yeah, I guess then we get an idea of interest level. What people they may want to see.
Number 5 and number 6. Let's just do number 5 first. Some flexibility. I don't know how responding would interpret that.
I believe the viable should require some flexibility from someone having decision.
So I'm sorry, it was number 4 and number 5. There's the.
On number 4,
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
the evaluation criteria should be adopted to guide funding decisions.
So. Where I'm going with this is both number 4 and number 5 are vague and not very well defined. I think that if you would push both of them to their extremes and say, I believe council should define and follow specific rules. And then the other extreme is I believe council should have complete flexibility and complete autonomy. And see where opinion is, but some flexibility and guiding is like. It's too wishy-washy.
So like for number 4, you can say, I believe.
Council should.
Evaluation criteria is. Or council should adopt a policy to guide funding decisions or
I
something.
believe council should define and follow specific rules.
Right.
And then I believe council should have complete flexibility. We've got the 2 extremes, see where the population
Right,
falls.
that seem workable? I think it's pretty straightforward.
And I'm intentionally using very stark language because you've got the 5-point scale there. People can back off the extreme and say, I somewhat.
Right. Okay, so that's 4 and 5,
How
and then
broad-
6.
I was just wondering how broadly familiar the community creative program is. Like you're asking people to evaluate it, I never,
Right,
I'm ignorant.
I mean, we could just take that out,
I would, we added so many other questions, I would just.
leave the whole question out, or just take out the community grants and leave the whole question out.
And doing something.
Yeah,
Drop that one because we've got. Tourism, overnight tourism, day trip, tourism sport, tourism culture, those are all separate. Yes. I just don't think many people.
So I guess this one would be kind of more like relating to the above two, like
If we
basically. Do you want to see, because number 4 is going to be, yes, this is the policy, it's strongly re-elected. Or number 5, I want council to have total flexibility, so 6 would be sort of a. You know, if there is a policy, what do you, do you agree that a grants-based approach is? Or would you rather, like, so what, we maybe need to present the alternative then?
But isn't that how, are we asking the what at this point as opposed to the how? So what events do you want us to pursue?
Right,
We said.
yeah, we were asking, what?
We should have, just,
But I think we've just blown out so many different choices where they can say agree, disagree.
Right,
I think how we decide to pursue overnight versus a sport event versus municipality.
I guess I'm thinking about it from like the council point of view, like we, you know. 9% of people thought that this grants based idea is a good one for this policy, right? So that's kind of what we don't want to gauge. Whether people even like the idea of having this grant application thing, or do you want us to just decide what to do with that money? Apart from allowing tourism driven grants. So I mean, I see the value in that question, and do 4 and 5 tease that out enough already?
I think it's saying here are the different flavors of options you can choose from. Do you want council to be painted into a corner, or do you want to give them seats honorary? Because isn't that the whole point of having representatives, is they've heard my point of view, they're going to represent that. I want you to go after your sport tourism events. And follow the
Right,
rules.
but that could be just city led, as opposed to run the grant program. Right, the city, we could just do it, we have a sports tourism person, so.
But how familiar is the respondent going to be to what a grants driven program is?
Well, you can change the wording to say, the city should create a grants based program.
I don't think anybody knows what grants based means.
Or program of grants that you can apply for with this money.
We already did that, though, that's what the policy is.
Right, yeah. That's true,
As opposed.
so we can just take it up.
as opposed to having this committee permanently there and have council use that committee to make a decision on this program or hiring this person and not putting it out to independent people holding events type of thing. That's kind of what I'm going to be doing. Oh, we went right down the events way. We're putting it into other people's hands and into grants, like, is there another option?
Right.
But that's just the way my brain was
No,
thinking.
I think that's good. I just don't know how you articulate those two options. So, and for just a lay person, it's like,
So we could just take that out. I think,
good.
thank you for taking this survey.
Well,
Okay,
And
thank you for.
thank you for torturing us.
on the comments and suggestions, questions, how about like recommendations? Because that'll give you more,
You have any other comments, suggestions,
or recommendations.
recommendations?
Just if they come to ideas like, yeah, we need a weather balloon festival or something, I have no idea, right? There you go, yeah. Yeah, we need,
Usually numbers in past that last open-ended section is there anything else you'd like us to do?
right, yeah,
Is there anything which could be concerns, could be suggestions?
ideas, I guess, not recommendations, ideas. Well, that's just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so. We've got some modifications of statute. And so with this survey, we're pretty good to go ahead then with the modifications as we discussed now, so that we can get it on, engage Stratford, get it out for 3 weeks. And then by our next meeting, we could have those, that come back to us.
Will there be a
Efficiencies
courtesy
and
notice
time.
sent out for launches?
Possibly.
I can find the condition.
Yeah.
So we're gonna modify this and put it on Engage Stratford, so John was wondering, are we gonna see a modified copy before it goes out?
We need to,
Yes.
I think we already just rehash all the questions.
I think we got it.
Well,
That's it.
Just to make sure we got it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I think we do because.
it could be, this is what's going on, I would say, it's just that we can't really make decisions to change things once. You know, like we need to get back into this format because the way it is really works to make a change, so even if we sent it to you as a draft.
And we all said, okay, that doesn't count.
And can't say it again.
Just like, you can say it unofficially,
But yeah,
hey,
but we need to be here to do. Is what you're saying.
Yeah. yeah, if there's gonna be any modifications, but you know, like. They could send it, you could send it to me, and look at it for typos.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and if you trust me, then
I think just another set of.
to make sure that it's all the things captured that we talked about.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll review it. Is that,
Thank you.
yeah, okay. All right, thank you, I think we are at the end.
For those who are not familiar with this process, a request to go to council, is that at a council meeting or for the subsequent meetings I'm talking about? So will that go to the council at a council meeting or will they email to them, or how does that get handled?
Through the chair, the request will be presented to council at a council meeting. Once we have a decision of council, we'll reach out to you guys as the members. And then if they agree to additional meetings, that's when we would canvass for additional meeting dates. That will also give us a bit more information on when the survey goes out, when the 3 weeks are, and then.
Good. Just to finish the question, suppose they say no.
It could happen, but thank
So
you.
I'm just asking, what are we doing?
And we're done.
Great.
And we're done.
What I wanted to hear.
So through the chair, if the direction is to not have any additional meetings, we would work with the chair to prepare a final report with all the work that was undertaken to date, along with the results of the survey, and that would go forward to council.
So that brings me back to where I started, that I would like the survey that we spent a good block of time. At the last meeting, I would like to put forward a motion that become part of the package that goes to council.
Okay,
Anybody want to second that for me?
oh, and we don't even need a secondary at this level. I don't think, do we? No.
Thank you.
Does everyone in favor of that? Let's get it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have adjourned to do this as well. We have to do that. We'll do Nathan.
Yes.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Both there.